Hi everyone, welcome back to Highly Inspired. I'm Ella.
I'm Jordan.
Hey guys, welcome back. Happy holidays, I guess.
Yeah, happy holidays. Yeah. We're in the winter months now. We have a new set.
New set.
No, we've been hopping around a little bit, which is fine. California is on another stay-at-home order, so we kind of got out of there. But we have actually waited a few weeks to figure out what we wanted to talk about in an upcoming episode because the election kind of brought a lot of misjudgments to the table, and there was some crazy stuff going on, and honestly,
oversaturation of the market with that stuff.
Yeah. It was just it was a little hectic for several days after when we thought it would be totally done right away. So we didn't want to get too far into that, and I think with some of these topics that we have decided to talk about, we always try to bring something new and to challenge not only ourselves, but maybe you guys who are listening. And so for today, we have something that honestly is so complicated and complex, but it is one of the most necessary and I believe groundbreaking, important things that is out there right now. I'm sure you agree too, Ella.
Yeah, no, and this is something that I have kind of heard about for several years of my life, just with the fourth industrial revolution happening and kind of this fear that's out there of increased technology and AI, and what does that mean? How is that going to merge the physical and the digital world? Are there going to be certain people that are kind of in charge of facilitating that and kind of seeing that through? How does that kind of play out? And it's something that I've always kind of had a concern about, just especially with social media, and we've seen like how much data consumption these companies have over us and how much power these big corporations have gained just in the last few years. And it's kind of all teeing up to a place in 2020 where, certain organizations and certain powerful people are laying out kind of their plan and their vision for the future. And I think that some of it sounds super, idealistic and something that from an idea perspective and a goal perspective, like, okay, I could get behind that. But when you break down, okay, who's going to be in control? How is this going to get implemented? Then that's where the differences start to happen. And we're going to be talking about the Great Reset, and not from a conspiracy theory kind of mentality, but from just a factual basis. And a lot of these organizations, including the World Economic Forum, which is kind of the main driving force behind this movement, has really just laid it out on their website what their goals are. And so, do you want to kind of talk about how you found out about this movement and kind of found the guy in charge of it and kind of pushing it forward?
So, well, first of all, you just mentioned that we have been building up to something. Yeah. We know that the technology has increased so much. Our data consumption and distribution has accelerated astronomically in the last decade. So I feel like we are growing to a climax, and I do believe that this Great Reset, we'll get to the explanation soon, is that climax. And right now, if you were to look this up, you will probably find a plethora of articles or headlines that allude to it being a conspiracy theory. Conspiracies as a whole are not all conspiracies are theories, and not all conspiracy theories are conspiracies. So this, I believe, is a conspiracy. Some believe that it's a conspiracy theory, that it is fake news and all of that. However, I actually was mentioned to it by several people, one including my uncle, my dad, one of my doctors that I see. And I had been seeing it in different places, and I was like, what is this? So I started researching. A lot of times I go to YouTube to try to find videos of people who give their testimonies on it or give their opinions and put it out there and make a video on it. And what I noticed was the first probably 25 videos, when you just search the Great Reset on YouTube, it's all content that has been published by the World Economic Forum. And I've come across this entity before, but I didn't click on any of their videos because I don't even know why. Maybe it was a sign that I didn't, or some sort of.
Well, I think if you're seeing everything from the same source, you're kind of like, okay, what else is out there?
Yeah.
That I could click on that maybe could give me a different set of information, especially because I had been following the World Economic Forum for a while on Instagram and was always a bit suspicious of their content, but also kind of enjoyed some of the facts that they had to share. And so I think when you see like 20 videos in a row on the same topic of that, you're like, okay, what else is out there that could give me an alternative perspective?
Yeah. And I didn't want to watch like a graphic design animation video, like a crash course. I wanted to listen to a person talking about it. So I clicked on this one video of an Irish pastor named Keith Malcolmson, and he made 3 parts of one video explaining this whole concept, and really just ranted for a long time, and instantly it scared me because he just had so much information on it. But one of the most alarming things that he said right off the bat is that this is going to be a global economic revamping, basically destroying the traditional sense of capitalism and instituting socialism. And this won't be in certain areas, this will be worldwide. And so although I had known socialism, I do know socialism, it goes way beyond that by taking advantage of the fourth industrial revolution and kind of just combining everything into one and reinstituting a new society for everybody on this planet. That's basically what it is.
Yeah. And I think that it's pretty insane. And I think what's interesting is that socialism has been enacted at the local level. We've seen that in countries such as Venezuela. We saw that in the Soviet Russia. We've seen this all over Latin America, etc. But we have not seen it as one global authoritative entity yet. And that's because we've always had kind of this, we've had variations of how governments can be run, varying with the American capitalist way, with kind of Denmark's capitalist model, with Europe, with the UK, etc. We haven't all been on the same page, and I think that people that are in really high positions of power, especially Klaus Schwab, who's in charge of the World Economic Forum, sees that as a threat to kind of creating this global socialist society, because otherwise, countries are kind of the enemy of achieving that goal in a sense.
Definitely.
And going back to the fact that like this isn't a conspiracy theory, it's a real factual thing that's happening. I mean, there might be elements of it that certain people exaggerate or try to move people into like a fear-mongering position, but like Jordan has the book right here and can kind of speak to
so I haven't read this yet. I haven't read this yet, but Klaus Schwab, who is the executive chairman of the WEF, wrote this year after the pandemic had already gone underway for like several months. I think he published it in July. So I haven't gotten into this, but I already know what it's about, and I probably don't agree with a lot of it. However, this is his guide to what he wants to do through the World Economic Forum and combining with other entities and companies all across the world to help get their agenda underway through advertising that this is going to help climate change and sustain economic development globally. So it sounds great. I mean, all of us care about climate change. All of us care about the planet. All of us care about getting to a better economic place after this pandemic, because we all know that everyone on Earth has suffered from this. However, I don't know if it's as simple as that. And what they're doing is they're disguising socialism as stakeholder capitalism. And Ella and I, for a while, I think we've both come across it. We just had no idea what it was, because we thought, oh, capitalism is in the phrase. That might mean the same thing. It might be just another friend of shareholder capitalism or something like that. But it's it's definitely not.
No. So I first came across stakeholder capitalism in a course that I took in the UK when I was studying there earlier this year. And I was very kind of intrigued with this idea. I had a really great, sweet professor, and he basically was like, explaining all of the corruption that goes on behind Amazon and how they don't treat their employees right and how they don't pay taxes and all the things that we're very much aware of as the holes within capitalism, and how basically the solution to that should not be that these companies should continue to have an obligation to their shareholders, which shareholder capitalism is the capitalism that all Western countries and even in Asia that practice capitalism are founded on, which is basically the main purpose of the corporation is maximizing shareholder value, which is like profit driven essentially. And kind of everything else will kind of come as you're doing that. Like if your shareholders care about the environment, if they care about human rights, and they're not going to invest in your company anymore. And you've kind of seen that play out because capitalism, a lot of people don't know this, but it's actually been the number one system that's lifted people out of poverty. And that doesn't get talked about enough. And socialism, on the contrast, has a history of killing 100 million people in the entire world. It's nuts.
But you'd never hear that. We never learned that in history class.
You learn about like Nazi Germany, for example, and the horrible things that fascism brought, but you never really fully dive in to Marxism, or at least I didn't.
We never talked about the Soviet Union. We really didn't even talk about the French Revolution that much. And what I've found this week after starting to research this is that the French Revolution has actually been marketed fairly wrongly to us, in the sense that, like, what you remember when I said this to you, I was saying that through the French Revolution, the middle class, lower class rebelling against the upper elites, aristocrats, and the government, that's a bad thing, right? That obviously a society wouldn't want that. But what was happening was their government, the wealthy elites, and the aristocrats were forcing socialism onto them with insane taxation and overriding their businesses and all of that, which led them to revolt.
Yeah.
And so actually that entire revolution is what played a massive role into how America became established, because they kind of took after, and they were an example of, this is what we don't want to happen to us. And so
we took it as an example.
Yeah.
We know our
that.
revolution was before theirs.
Yeah, but it was, they're both like very coincidental, and the new Declaration of Independence that they had kind of modeled ours.
What's interesting about theirs, though, is that theirs, it led to like mob mentality. I think that you're right that the inception of the idea was to revolt against the aristocrats and whatever, very similar to what these powerful people are trying to do through the Great Reset of taking a system like capitalism that's already in place and using it to their benefit. But I do think that the problem with the French Revolution, and they're still kind of bearing out kind of the fallbacks of this, which kind of led into we're kind of going on a rant now, but Napoleonism and that sort of thing, is that they gave into the mob mentality, and socialism still infected their country, where like that never, luckily that didn't happen here. And maybe that's to your point, where we kind of saw how the French failed in their revolution, and we were kind of like, okay, we got to make sure that that doesn't happen to us. But kind of going back to like just how many people socialism kills, I kind of just wanted to break down like the different numbers, how you get to that 100+ million people. So in Soviet Russia, Lenin and Stalin killed 67 million. In North Korea, Kim Jong-un and his father killed 1.7 million. And then in China, there's been estimated 38 to 45 million. And that's what we know of. So that just kind of, I think, gives people kind of a grounding of like how serious ideologies can lead to failure, and how I truly believe like the best idea should win. And if it doesn't, people get too into their own ideology and it just keeps going down a bad path of more deaths.
Totally.
And I think that's something that people get confused about, and I even have been confused about this, is what's the difference between like a Venezuela model of socialism and people like to say that Denmark or Norway or the Scandinavian countries are socialists, but they're really not. They're capitalists. So do you have like any kind of perspective on that, or kind of what the difference is between the two?
I do know that there is a difference between the two.
Yeah.
In Venezuela, it's been a tragedy what's happened to this country in the last 2 decades, basically with the election of Hugo Chavez in 1999. He has now implemented a complete socialist agenda, and so many industries, so many people have suffered greatly from it, even before the pandemic. And maybe what you would see in the media over here is them showcasing the wealthy elites that have actually benefited from the socialist system that's there, although there are millions of people that are in, like, it's divided the country a ton. And so one thing that Elle and I, we talked about earlier with the government overriding the agricultural industry is that farmers basically got all their farms taken over by the government. And that is vital. I mean, talk about industries that are necessary in terms of food. So many people have starved because not only can these farmers not own their property and not grow the crops and farm the way that they wanted to, but they also lost their livelihoods and then they starved.
Yeah.
So that was a massive error on the part of this new government that came in. And I don't know. I think that Venezuela has a lot of work to do to overcome some of these issues that have arose in the last 2 decades. And it's very different than what's over in Northern Europe, like Sweden.
Yeah. For example, like kind of what you mentioned, once they, I think it was between 1999 and up until recently, they have taken so much of these farmers' lands, because basically the concept is we're the government, we're the people in charge, we're the most powerful people, we're the people with the most money, therefore we know how to farm better than you.
They think they know better than everyone else.
So they're like, okay, we're going to seize all of your land. We're going to but we'll redistribute to you. So don't worry, like we'll make the production more efficient. So basically, as the state controlled the agricultural industry, Venezuela's food production fell by 75% in the last 2 decades, and their country's population increased by 33%. So not only are they having a major food production crisis, their population is simultaneously increasing by like 33%, and like that is a recipe.
Eventually, they will run out of food.
Which they are.
They already are, but the amount of people versus amount of available products to consume will eventually hit like a complete flat line.
And something that's really interesting too about socialism in general is that it's a lot of times intellectuals, professors, economists that are the ones that think, oh, I know better, because they're coming from an academic background, but an academic is so much different than an entrepreneur or a farmer or someone who's in the workforce. They don't understand how to get from point A to point B in the most efficient way possible. What people don't understand is that capitalism is a science, and it drives efficiency, like supply and demand constantly work together in order to make sure like prices get as low as possible. And Scandinavian countries are not socialists. They're still democracies. Now, they have some more policies that are more community-based than the U.S., such as like their 25% sales tax, but they are not Venezuela, and they actually get really offended when U.S. politicians call them socialist countries, because they're way more in line with the U.S. and our capitalist structure than places like Venezuela. So I think that that's helpful to clear up the confusion, because I think when people and organizations such as the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Soros, Schwab bring up this utopia society that is similar to Denmark and Norway, et cetera, that their implementation is not those countries, their implementation is way more closer in line with Venezuela. And I just went to Denmark, and it's a beautiful country, but like, yes, like products there are more expensive because there's a 25% sales tax. But you know what? If that's what they value, because they would rather have education be more mainstream, like that's their prerogative as a country to do so. You know?
And it's more bottom up in terms of taxation as opposed to top down, which is how it is over here. I mean, I've never visited, but I totally believe you. And I think it's very interesting, like comparing and contrasting all these different systems in different countries. I really like how you brought up that professors in academia think that they know what's best for everyone. Not all professors are like that, but a lot of this has stemmed from intellectuals who are very, very smart at what they study and what they work on and how they teach their students. However, most probably haven't run a business. Most probably haven't been in politics. And so there's a very different, I think that capitalism opens up a lot of great opportunities for people who have different strengths to fit into this equation instead of grouping everybody into one category, like elite versus regular people. It kind of helps people certain strengths go into different positions. And I think that that's really beautiful in a lot of ways. Talking about people who think that they know everything, I want to try to get into
the
who's
behind this. So who do you think the main actors are in this whole Great Reset?
Well, I do think about some, but I know of a few. Like this is factual people. We looked into what the quotes were, who has gone on air, who has said or alluded to word for word the Great Reset,
and also who's using who sees COVID as an opportunity to make the Great Reset happen. There's also a connection between the two. And a lot of these actors that you're going to mention, they see COVID as a crisis. And there's these 4 steps that go into how to make a society, a socialist society. And they're
Can I read them?
Yeah,
the steps?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think you sent me this from Yuri at the beginning of the year, but basically it starts with 1, demoralization, which is educating an entire generation on a different ideology than what we have.
Specifically
Marxism, socialism. 2, destabilization, which is throughout the economy, foreign relations, and defense systems. So that's just catching us off guard. We're figuring out what's going on. 3, crisis, violent exchange of power, structure, and economy. That's bad news. And then 4, normalization, period of stability until the next cycle reaches crisis point. So do you think that we've hit normalization with COVID at this point?
I think that we're in the beginning stages of it. I think that just going based off of what these key actors have said, I mean, the World Economic Forum, which is one of the 3rd main parties involved in this, they pretty much have straight up said their goal is by 2030 at the latest. And the guy who broke down the 4 stages of ideological subversion, he said that normalization can take as short as like a year to 2 years. So I don't really know. I think that we're kind of moving from crisis to normalization. Yeah.
I mean, we're definitely not in panic mode like we were earlier this year, but I do think that from what I've seen with people, we're definitely adjusted to this new reality that we have, everything being more online, not really socializing as much, things we used to do. We don't have that anymore. And actually what I do personally, and I'm not afraid to admit this, whenever I see that, I actually tell people all the time, like, don't forget what we had before. Like, I don't want that. There are certain things that I really don't want people to forget because I don't want to lose them. I think that we're losing a lot of middle ground areas for people to not only meet new people, but for people to build community connection. Like, we're really losing that. And what's scary, because everyone's been so much more invested in politics this year, is that politics has become that community. Like in a lot of ways, like that's been the connection. Like you connect so much with people who agree with you, but then you can't connect at all with people who don't agree with you.
Yeah.
Which just adds even more to the already horrendous polarization that we had prior to this year. So
yeah, and I think you bring up a really good point, because I think before this polarization really hit a peak, I think whether you were a Republican or a Democrat, somewhere in the middle, everyone agreed on the principles of overall freedom, freedom of speech, free markets, laissez-fairness, classical liberalism, and we don't agree on that anymore. So if you don't, then you can't have community with your neighbor. Like you can't have, and you know what? That is the goal of these powerful people, is to create chaos between a nation, essentially. And that's exactly what you're seeing right now. And it's really sad, because how can we debate, should we have an American tax plan or a Denmark tax plan? How can we even have that conversation if we don't agree we should be a free country?
How can we even agree on things like that when we can't even agree on if we should have Thanksgiving?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
The state of Oregon, I'm not afraid to say this either. You can come at me, but the state of Oregon was encouraging people to call the cops on their neighbors.
Yeah.
Like, that is wild. So the issues with the Great Reset, that's like 500 million times more complicated and complex than even these little trivial issues that we've been having here in the U.S. this year.
And also, I don't want people to think that all these like trivial things are just random. And one of the main key players in this movement is this man named George Soros, which I don't know if you want to give any background into who he is, but
so he's Hungarian. He is a billionaire. He is the founder of the Open Society.
I think so.
But basically, I actually don't even know how this man has gotten his money.
Finance.
Okay, so through investing and...
In America, weirdly enough, like he got all of his money through the American capitalist system, and he's donated most of his money to American organizations, but he is pretty much like, I mean, you can look up like kind of a web where all of his money goes. It's common knowledge. This is, again, not a conspiracy theory. It's literally out there for the open to see. And he can be tracked down to all of the groups that are involved in the civil unrest, all of the groups making, you know, certain issues seem like they're should be the forefront of American voting, and that they should be, you know, life or death decisions. He is pushing all of these groups, funneling all this money, because he truly believes that America is not a great country and it's not worth saving. Like he has quotes like that.
That hit me hard.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's one of the key players.
So we've got Soros, who's not American, was born in Europe. We've got the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, who's Canadian, who just last week went on air and was alluding to wanting and advocating for a reset of the economy and the policies that Canada was going to roll out. Then we've also got Klaus Schwab, who's the executive chairman of the World Economic Forum. He is from Switzerland. And then who else is Prince Charles?
Prince Charles, which is random.
We should have said that the first one. But basically, those four guys are not American, and they are heavily behind this entire concept. And what that puts into my head is that either other parts of the world are jealous of the economic success that America has had in such a short amount of time, or I'm trying to understand their motives, and maybe I need to do some more research, but it just really seems like a power play.
I think it is a power play. I think that when you have quotes such as, you know, you have quotes from Soros saying the main enemy to an open society, which is his kind of main thesis, I believe, is no longer communism, but a capitalist threat. When you also hear him say the main obstacle to a stable, just world is the United States, I think it's really clear like what his position is. And the reason why it doesn't make me feel like, oh, he care, like the reason why I don't trust these billionaires, the monarchy, all these people involved to be really like, oh gosh, they care so much about the average person. The reason why I don't believe that is because they're all extremely wealthy. And like you said, I think that this comes down to power, because when you look at the data, capitalism has not only put America in a great position, but it's also helped increase wealth to the average person across the world, and life expectancy. Life expectancy is increased by I think it was like 62.5 years worldwide to over 74 years in 2020. So in 20 years, we've increased life expectancy by over 10 years, you know?
Yeah.
So how can you tell me that the current system in place is completely wrong and you 4 people have it all figured out? Like, that just doesn't add up to me. I don't know. I could be wrong.
No, I completely agree. We have accumulated so much wealth through capitalism, and that's a great thing. I believe in freedom, and I believe that people who have reaped financial success from their businesses or whatever do have some sort of obligation to give back. At least I would if I were in that position. However, I don't believe that it's the government's obligation or right to demand that such companies or such people, this is coming down to the individual level. Socialism does not apply to just the massive big tech or whatever. It's going to affect the average middle class person, lower class person. So I don't believe that it's the government's job or the wealthy elites that reaped benefits from capitalism to then take over everybody else.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. Like, you guys were in the system, you've benefited from the system, and now you want to stunt innovation and the new generation of business leaders and individuals who want to improve society. Like, why are all these 80-year-old men thinking that
they are 80 years
all
old?
Like 88 years old? Like, I'm like, aren't you gonna die soon? I'm sorry, that's kind of mean, but I mean, really. And it's like, why do they really care that much? I don't know.
I'm very sussed with Bill Gates because, okay, I told you this a couple days ago, but I watched an Ellen video with Bill Gates, who did this game with Ellen where she was quizzing him on average grocery store product costs, and some were on sale, some weren't. He did not even know what the average price of a piece of fruit was, or a cereal box, and not even a water bottle for that matter. These are products that we buy every day. Maybe not, we don't go to the grocery store every single day, but all the time, at least once a week.
Yeah.
We know this like the back of our hand. The normal American citizen knows that.
Yeah, like if you tried to sell me a single apple for $10, I'd be like, no.
No, he was like $10 off with every single product, and the whole audience was like, what is going on? And I think he knew. Like, you could see him blushing. He was embarrassed. And probably same with Prince Charles. Oh my gosh, he's born into English royalty. Do you think he has any idea what life as an average middle class citizen is like? No idea. So these are the people that are forming a squad to roll out what they want to do with resetting the entire global economy, because they believe that what they have and the resources they have will ultimately benefit everybody because they know the best for us, when in reality they might not know every single thing about how life is.
Yeah. Now, do you think that aside from the fact that you disagree with the implementation of a lot of these ideas, such as you've mentioned that you think that individuals should decide how to give back to society, whether it's monetarily or through their actions, it shouldn't be the role of the government. It's actually more efficient to give it to individuals versus the government. Do you think that there's any positives to what they're saying, not in their implementation, but just in their goals that you could get behind?
I think how they've been marketing this with helping to sustain climate change, honestly, utilizing tech, I think in a lot of ways tech is great. Tech has aided healthcare. Tech has aided communication. We don't need to fly as much. I mean, companies are allowing more remote work because we don't need to fly all over the country, which in turn helps the environment. I do think that those messages that they are putting out are important, but it just comes down to that I don't want a massive global entity to be telling everyone and controlling everyone in order to comply to what their agenda is. I believe that if we can get these messagings out there, that we can do it on our own with keeping the values of freedom and liberty.
Yeah. And I think that we have been doing that. I think a lot of people don't know this because I think that we all are really scared and passionate about trying to, fix climate change and kind of self-correct all of the carbon emissions that we release into the world. And I think that's important. And I think that that's a goal that shouldn't be ignored. But I am not for just aimlessly throwing money at solutions that don't have real results. And I was explaining to someone the other day that actually U.S. carbon emissions decreased after we exited the Paris Climate Accord. And actually most of the countries that are part of the Paris Climate Accord don't meet the requirements. And I thought that was really interesting. Like, okay, why is that? Like, what's the reasoning behind that? And it's because if corporations and if companies, even small companies, are responsible to the shareholders and the people that are near and dear to the business, the investors, the owner, etc., like they're gonna react to like even things as simple as aluminum. For example, Coca-Cola has reduced the amount of aluminum they have in their cans by like 72%.
Yeah,
there was no government entity that was like, Coca-Cola, you need to reduce your materials in your Coke. It was like, okay, this is cheaper for us. It benefits the people that are invested us. It benefits us. We can pay our employees more, and things kind of have like a natural way of working themselves out. And also consumers love eco-friendly products. So consumers are also driving the decision making of
the public drove that demand and the emphasis for reimagining like how to manufacture goods. And so now it's like a happy medium where, companies can market that this was made sustainably and environmentally friendly, and the public is like, wow, I want to buy that now. That's because of the people. We did that. The government didn't tell us to say those things to encourage companies to do that.
So empowering to us and to you. You know? Like that's so cool.
And that's what brings us together when these ideas and messages come from the great majority, and then we affect change. That 100% is empowering. That wasn't because of the government. That was because of us.
Yeah, and
through our freedom.
And don't doubt that. Like, don't doubt the power of you and the individual. We are people. We have the power to find the change within ourselves. We don't need billionaires looking down on us, telling us how we can affect change. Like, I believe in us as a generation and society.
Me too. And now that we have all this technology with, social media, as much as sometimes it can be a little toxic, it has allowed us to connect with people all over the world. I don't know what's going to happen if this happens with the digital space, but I am afraid that the censorship, I'm afraid that it might blend with our biology even more. Well, that's what the fourth industrial revolution is. It's a blurring of the boundaries between the physical, digital, and biological world. So to me, the war on reality that has been tossed around this entire year leading up to the election, this could make it so much worse. And so I just want people to remain skeptical of, okay, we have beauties that technology has given us. There's beauty in the physical world around us when we really are in tune with our reality. And there's beauty within our own biology and health and having control of what we put into our bodies and what we do with our bodies. I'm not trying to scare people, but there is word, I read a lot of articles about this, on how if this starts, what they would do is merge with the World Health Organization. And obviously they're connected to the vaccine and all these countries getting the vaccine, but they would not only require everybody to get the vaccine, but you would have to show documentation even to get on an airline that you've gotten the vaccine.
No, when my family was in Hawaii, like I didn't go, but some of my family members went, and every restaurant they went to, every place they went to, they had to like show their papers that they tested negative for COVID. Yeah. Like literally every place they went. So clearly the next step is the vaccine. And what's interesting about this vaccine, I don't want to go on a tangent, but what's interesting about this vaccine is that it, first of all, it uses RNA to be created. So actually my professor was explaining to me to this, and he was saying that he wants to wait a while to take the vaccine and see how it plays out, because it's the first vaccine we've ever had, RNA, which reacts directly to people's genetic codes, and some people's genetic codes might not work well with this vaccine. And so I think that even something as simple as this, even though we're in a pandemic, the death rate is not higher than 99%. So it's like, why are we requiring a vaccine? There's diseases out there, measles, et cetera, that are way more deadly to younger generations that the vaccine isn't even required for those. So like, why is this one so much worse? Like, I understand we've seen so many deaths so fast, but there's other vaccines out there that those aren't required, and those seem way more serious to me than even the COVID one.
Yeah, not a 99.9% survival rate.
Yeah, but something interesting that you touched on that I wanted to ask you about was you kind of like mentioned some of the 4 pillars that people have that they should balance. And I know Chapman in the Piazza, Chapman's where we go to school, has like those 4 pillars. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, so it's spiritual, physical.
Yes.
But wait, I know those 2 for sure.
Yes.
Intellectual
and social.
Okay.
So like those are like the 4 pillars of society.
You're so disappointed in us. We didn't know that.
No, I know. But okay, it's not just like Chapman made this up. Goes back way, way back in history.
Those are 4 pillars of life.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of beautiful in a sense. And someone actually, like a mentor of me, kind of explained those to me before I even went to Chapman and saw it. But
it's amazing.
What's scary about socialism and what's scary about people like Schwab's and Soros and all these people that we're talking about is that they aren't taking into effect all 4 of those pillars. They're literally just looking at, are people's physical needs being met? They're not looking at, are your social needs being met? They aren't even looking at, are your exercise needs being met with physical? Are your spiritual needs being met? Are your social needs being met? They're intellectual. All of those needs have been under attack recently, and we've been convinced that those aren't important. And they are important. They need to all 4 be in balance. People need to explore all of those and figure out what that means for you. In spiritual life, do you have a religion? Do you not have a religion? Are you spiritual? Are you religious? Are you into Eastern religions? Are you into Western religions? People need to have that space to grow in that. With social, are you an introvert? Are you an extrovert? And the pandemic has halted the exploration in all of those areas, and with the lockdowns too.
You're so right. The only pillar that's really been protected throughout all of this, which arguably is sort of the most important, physical. We need to maintain physical life.
However, go to the gym though.
We don't have gyms for exercise. We don't have any middle ground to meet people or socialize. And socializing even with people that you do know, you're supposed to wear a mask, which in turn like affects communication a lot. We don't have that spiritual element because churches and places of worship have been majorly shut down.
People weren't able to go to the ocean or even places of nature where people have like spiritual experiences.
Completely. Parks were shut down, national parks. And then intellectually, education has been completely uprooted. With this great reset, I do believe that they will try to continue this. And honestly, they could implement a global system of education of which there's no physical teachers anymore. Teachers that can decide what they want to teach children. It could be a government person instructing
thousands of people.
Or it could be a robot. We don't even know. And that's terrifying to me because I don't want my kids to be. I think what was really great about my education growing up and even in college still to this day, I have had such a mix of amazing teachers. Some maybe I didn't like as much, but of completely different backgrounds, of completely different socioeconomic beliefs, religious beliefs. And that allowed me in a lot of ways to like figure out, how do I fit into this? Like, do I like this person? Like, what do I really like about them? What don't I like about them? And I did have some that forced certain things down my throat, but that's fine. That's all part of like growing up and learning what you respond to best. And so if kids are only growing up with one like voice, with one set of belief systems, that's exactly what's in China.
I know.
That's communism.
Yeah.
They all learn the same way from the same instruction manual.
Yeah.
And they all become the same person.
And it makes sense. I mean, it makes sense why when social media first came to be, it was all about free speech, and this is a platform for you to say whatever you want. And this is basically just the digital version of
real life.
Of real life, exactly. And now that's not the case. The enemy of these tech companies and these powerful, almost, I mean, I would argue they're monopolies at this point. Mm-hmm. Their biggest threat is the diversity of ideas and the spread of ideas. If that is your enemy, like that company, that person in charge, they need a check and they need to be dismantled of their power. I don't know how that gets done, but you're entering in a Rockefeller kind of section of life, you know?
Okay, going off a little bit, but Rockefeller, we found that the Rockefeller Foundation is involved with the Great Reset plan.
Yes.
Were they at that meeting?
I'm not sure. I know that David Rockefeller back in the 80s, I have this quote from him, and he said, this was in the 80s. He said, "We are on the verge of a global transformation. All we need now is the right major crisis, and all the nations will accept the new world order." And I looked, and like their foundation has spoken on the Great Reset and their position on it, but I haven't really like looked further into that. But it's really interesting because I think the Rockefeller family is mixed. I think that it's similar to maybe the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Like they've given a lot of money and stuff to things, but also, I mean, like anything, if you get that much power and economic wealth, like one individual entity, it takes so much self-control to not want more. I mean, that's like every basic
I feel like that's
religion,
that's human nature. We always want more.
Yeah.
We have to fill that void. And so when you're someone who's as successful as Bill Gates, and honestly, well, Rockefeller at his time was, I think, the richest man over even Bezos now.
Really?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
But just the constant hunt for more and more. And so, yeah, when you already have so much power, I guess all you would want from then on is more power. Like that makes sense psychologically. You just mentioned the New World Order, which I did want to like maybe explain. That has to do with what this new society would be.
Yeah, it's just a different word for it. Yeah.
After Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, said that statement in his interview on TV or whatever, there was a viral petition that went around criticizing the use of the pandemic to implement a risky experiment, gained 800,000 signatures in less than 2 hours to stop the bringing in of the socialist and environmentalist sort of agenda. But I thought that was crazy. 800,000 in Canada opposed that in less than 2 hours.
That's really great.
It might be circulating there more than it is here.
Yeah.
At least just this term, like reset.
Well, yeah, I think if someone like the Prime Minister were to use that term, I mean, he's someone that people listen to a lot from that country, so clearly people are going to Google it.
Oh, imagine if Trump said that.
Yeah, everyone would like...
People would go into shutdown mode. They'd be so afraid.
I know. Do you think that there's any correlation between some of the lockdowns and kind of progressing the Great Reset? I mean, we kind of mentioned it,
I think that in the beginning, just as how we were all completely shocked that this was happening, it was so surreal those first couple weeks. I'm sure that politicians and people around the world, these figures, thought that too, that we were just figuring it out, that we needed to go on lockdown until we could figure it out or get a better grasp on it. But what I think is after a couple weeks to a month, once we got very settled in to this new reality, I think that there were people, including the names that we just listed off a little bit ago, sort of started to see it as an opportunity to implement this reset that has been in the works for several years. Like even when climate change 6-7 years ago started to really become the topic of discussion, they started using this as, this is the time for the reset. This is the time for us to enact a global series of tasks that we need to lay out. So I think that with every crisis, they will probably do this. If it doesn't happen with the coronavirus crisis, it'll be the next one. And they'll continue to do it until hopefully they get rid of capitalism altogether and socialism becomes more of the dominant, I guess, economic layout across the globe. So, yeah, I think that they definitely reimagined their perception of it, not right in the beginning, but sort of in the middle. And that's why he wrote this entire book, published it in July. Mm-hmm. How long does it take to write a book? Yeah. Like, this was already written probably several months before that.
Yeah. It's very strategic.
Yeah.
And something that also is really interesting is that when we were first figuring this out, and we checked this with multiple sources, but a lot of these people and the met in October of 2019 and they worked through a scenario, and this is before COVID kind of was in the topic of conversation. This was in October 2019, and it was organized by well, you can tell
so okay, October 2019, New York City. They called this, I'm giving it drama because this is dramatic. They called this Event 201 a global pandemic exercise. So it was a world game response to a potential global virus outbreak. 15 individuals were invited all around the globe. Individuals from the UN, the World Economic Forum, President Trump, all over the globe. Like,
Trump was there?
I think Trump was there. Yeah.
I didn't hear that.
Wait, sorry. He was at the conference. He was at the WF.
He wasn't there.
He wasn't sorry. Gates was there though.
Yes. Well, Gates organized it. It was the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation plus the World Economic Forum plus Johns Hopkins Center
UPS,
of Disease Control,
the Marriott Hotels, the Chinese Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the World Bank, the CIA, Lufthansa Airlines, the UN. I think that's it. And then maybe a few others.
Yeah.
But this was the squad. They come in and they basically went through a potential, I guess, imaginary scenario of what could happen, which instantly I was like, wait a minute, they met and even thought that this could happen? Does that not seem
And it was
skeptical?
Specifically a corona. And oh, by the way, this is a totally public event. You can search the transcript. It's not secretive at all. And they basically ran through a scenario of what if we had a pandemic that was specifically a COVID strand. So it's not even like, oh, it's the flu or whatever. Like, it was specific to a similar scenario that then happened several months later.
Yeah, and they didn't just talk about, oh, what would we do with vaccine and whatever. They went through many potential scenarios of people locking down, people being more in the tech world, digital space, more things going remote, students learning online, the media having to play a massive factor. I really do think that they talked about all of this.
They talked about even the social unrest. They talked about the racial divide that would happen. They talked about the benefits of being on Zoom University. They talked about, should the internet be shut down?
Yeah. They decided not to shut it down because they felt that
people would get suspicious.
Yeah, that people would be too suspicious that this was a hoax.
Big.
Yeah, and then they also figured out, or they decided what they would do if a massive group of people were anti-vaccination. They talked about the vaccine, how long that timeline would take place. And this was all 2-3 months before the coronavirus in China first hit, because it hit in December.
Yeah.
So this is a month and a half before that. And I think that the overall theme of this meeting is that this Great Reset plan was definitely involved, at least a hint of it, alluding to, okay, we can control what takes place within the coronavirus pandemic, but then what happens after? And all of these questions that they discussed really mean a lot to the Great Reset.
And I think what's interesting too is, like, I think that these people have been waiting for a crisis to occur for a while in order to implement this fourth stage of political subversion. But I think it's interesting that a war hasn't been able to do that yet, because a war unites certain sides. Mm-hmm. But the pandemic has not united America. I thought it might, but it didn't. And it seems like they maybe knew that.
It seemed like it did for a week, and then that faded.
Yeah.
And people started fighting over toilet paper.
Then everything became so political. And the thing that's weird about the pandemic is I'm someone who always just tries to trust my gut and the science and the knowledge that is available to me at the time to make decisions. And I might have talked about this on the show, but back in February, I was taking the pandemic pretty seriously. I went to like 10 different places in Europe trying to find masks. Yep. I bought all these supplies. I was telling people, you need to gear up for this. You need to take this seriously. We shouldn't be, my friends kept wanting to go to all these different countries to travel. And I was like, guys, there might be lockdowns, and everyone thought I was nuts, but I was just following what made sense to me. It didn't make sense to me that scientists were like, yeah, masks don't work. I was like, but a doctor's wearing a mask. That doesn't make sense. Like media, and just because someone's a professional, we talked about this on our skepticism episode, doesn't mean that they're giving you the right information. Nope.
Everyone's different too.
Then I was taking it too seriously when no one was taking it seriously.
I did too.
And then everyone, like, it flipped, it felt like. And basically, once the data came out by June in the summer that, okay, this only affects a certain demographic of people, and people that are young should probably go back to school in person. Little kids need to be socialized. There's other people that are dying of loneliness, etc. What we talked about, this pandemic, the lockdowns don't help those three other pillars. Then I was like, okay, the lockdowns don't make any sense.
The lockdowns make no sense.
It works in a place like New Zealand, where it's one island of a country and you can just lock your borders forever until there's a vaccine. But it doesn't work in a country like the US at our level of interstate travel and such, you know.
I totally respect how you looked at it, and I honestly think I had a similar perception too. And once after a significant amount of time, I started to see, wait a minute, we don't have any like certifiable data on this. And once they started coming out with it, it's a 99.9% like survival rate and all of that. That's when I was like, okay, in the beginning, we didn't know those numbers. We do know these numbers now. Yes, there's cases, so we should have adjusted and not continued the lockdowns, because I really believe that the lockdowns are why so much has suffered right now. It is why so many businesses have fallen under. It is why so many divorces have occurred. It is why so many people have committed suicide because of mental stress and not having any, like, we've been in our homes so much. We need to be out in the world. And so I believe that the lockdowns the first one makes sense. We were figuring it out. After that, when we got these numbers and we started to learn more about the virus and the testing, and we had the materials, I do think that we should have figured out another method of approach. But that's where I think that the figures come in, and they saw an opportunity to
hide it.
I think that at that point, everything that we've experienced for the last several months has been a smokescreen for this stuff that's in the background, and it's very underway, and the media probably won't cover it. So I think it's up to us to continue to research and follow it and stay as up to date on stuff as we can, and try to be still good people. That's what we can control. We can control what we can control. We can't control everything in the world, but what I don't want to do is encourage people who can control a lot to hunt for controlling everything, because that's what it seems like.
Yeah, and what doesn't make sense to me is that, first off, what you mentioned, we should, after the first wave of lockdowns, we should have looked at the data and made strategic different decisions based off of age demographic and health demographic. And the fact that we still are treating every person like the same category is very bizarre to me.
I asked my grandma this on Thanksgiving. I legitimately looked at her and I said, Grandma, knowing now that we've been locked down and I literally lost an entire year of my 20s, knowing now that this lockdown vibe might continue for another year to 2 years, would you as an elder have opted to maybe retract your life to allow healthy people who are in the risk, what's that word?
Category.
Yeah, a non-risky category. Would you have allowed us to continue to sustain the economy? And she said 100%, no doubt, yes.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Do you think it's also interesting that these lockdowns, they have like zero effect on the Amazons of the world? I saw that Amazon's profits were up by like 100%. Walmart was up by 70% since March, but they affect small businesses. Do you think that ties into this great reset? Because if these large CEOs of these huge corporations are connected with the World Economic Forum, doesn't it benefit them that their natural competitors, which are mom and pop shops, go obsolete due to lockdowns?
I'm sure Amazon took over all of that.
Yeah.
I think it's absolutely tragic because not everyone has the ability to build a company as large as Amazon. No one can compete with Amazon. I don't know if Bezos is involved. I wouldn't be surprised.
I mean,
if
he might not be involved, but
he's a massive key player if he is.
He's benefiting from it. Whether or not he's involved, we can't deny the fact that big companies are benefiting from lockdowns. 21% of small businesses have already closed. Revenue's down 30% for the rest of the year. And what's also interesting is that Congress hasn't done a second relief.
I know.
Which is really interesting because again, originally kind of Republicans were wary of the idea, and then President Trump, and this was before the election, was like, okay, I think that he was like, Senator Mitch McConnell, like, let's get this through, even though a lot of people who are traditional capitalists or traditional Republicans usually aren't for government spending. But I think that everyone was starting to see, okay, this is an unusual time. Like, this doesn't mean that we're moving towards socialism. But I think it's really interesting that specifically Nancy Pelosi, and I'm not trying to be political here, this is literally what has happened. Like, you can look it up on the news. Nancy Pelosi has refused to sign a second stimulus package for both individuals and companies. And at first it was like, oh, it's the election. That makes sense, kind of. I get that somewhat politically, but now I don't get it. Now it's like, we're past the election.
We're about to hit 2021.
We're about to hit 2021. Like, why haven't you, like, you're the one who's holding up the stimulus package, and you're usually on the side of being more into government spending and aiding people. And I still can't figure that one out. I don't know.
I don't know either. I mean, I hope it would be before the end of the year.
Yeah.
I think people really need that if we have any hope of getting to a better position at the start of 2021.
Yeah.
I really am not too hopeful for 2021, to be honest. But
I know. I feel like people keep being like, oh my gosh, like when New Year's happens, like all will be well. But just because we're switching on to like the new year doesn't mean that, I don't know.
Yeah, no, definitely. You brought up Amazon and Bezos, and then it brought big tech into my head. And what I did find is that the World Economic Forum, which is the leading brains behind this operation, is openly supported by Apple and Pfizer, which is interesting. So Apple is definitely involved, maybe not as overtly as like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation or Soros, but I do think that these massive companies are all key players. And it brings a lot of questions to the table of like technology, because Ellen, you and I were talking about this before, just about how Apple has kind of hit a wall with their innovation, and what's the next step of building products that are more invasive in our lives, because we already have like robots that are listening to our every conversation, and data is like the most valuable thing right now. It's a currency for these companies because they have so much money. Like, that's what they search for. It's not money. But for Apple,
it's the new oil.
Yeah.
Data's the new oil.
Data's the new oil. But for Apple and companies that produce tech products, what is that next like set of mechanisms that they're going to build that maybe cross into the biological realm of the fourth industrial revolution. I don't know what it is, but
I think
it's really
exactly what you said. I think it's AI merging with humans, and I think people need to figure out where is their line in the sand. And I think what's really interesting is that, not to go on too much of a rant, but Elon Musk has been predicting this for a while. And I mean, he's even working on his own brain chip. But what's interesting is that Elon Musk is not a globalist. He said that repeatedly. He came to America as a poor immigrant from...
he's a product of capitalism. He's
from South America. And I think now his net worth almost is surpassing...
I think it passed Gates.
It passed Gates.
Not Bezos, but Gates. Yeah.
Which is really interesting. And I think that he has said on record, I think it was on Joe Rogan's podcast, that there needs to be regulation in place for AI. And he's scared for how powerful it can become over humans. That still scares me that he's in that realm, but I would rather him than someone who's a globalist, because I think that he knows a line to cross and what not to. We'll see where it happens.
Yeah.
I'm not giving him a pass. He could be capable of something just as bad, but I do think it's interesting that he's not a globalist, and globalists actually fear him a lot.
Oh, I'm sure, because they know he has resources and power and financial means. That differentiation between globalists and non-globalists is key. Yeah. Because pretty much every name that we've listed off that is behind the Great Reset initiative right now is a certifiable globalist. I have no doubt about that. And they're also from all these different countries, which means that we're just covering such a massive area. Something that I did want to get into, and it kind of goes back to what you're talking about with the pandemic and how we've gotten to this point right now. In order to get a better grasp on the Great Reset plan and to educate ourselves and continue to educate ourselves, I think it's important to figure out the difference between what's right versus what's right just because someone tells us it's right. And what I've seen a lot of this year I'm not anti-masks, but what I've seen a lot with the masks thing is that it's become a political symbol in a lot of ways because people of a higher power authority tell you this is right. So you need to do it because this is right. And I feel like that's the way that so many people market it now. It's convincing people that you're doing the right thing because we tell you that this is right. And unless you really go out and find that external data for yourself and research for yourself to prove if it really is right or wrong, you don't know. Because I feel like what we can all agree on is that you can't trust everything right now and you can't trust everyone. So with this Great Reset thing, before things get too crazy, I really just want people to ask themselves that question, like, that's the main marketing ploy. That you're right if you do this.
Yeah, and we want to be good people. We want to do the right thing, and it is easier to have an authoritative voice telling you what's right and wrong and just to follow it blindly like sheep and see it black and white, as opposed to taking that information, looking up other information, sitting in the gray area and discerning for yourself what the truth is. It's a lot easier. And if you think about why religion gained so much popularity, especially authoritative ones, it's because you didn't have to question morality. You just listened to a higher power somewhere up here telling you what to do. And this is a secular religion. I'm sorry, it is. I throw around that term, but it is a real term. You can look it up, figure it out for yourself. And people like to be told what to do because it's easier. But I think that it's really important to not be scared to go on this journey to figure out the truth. And it can be scary because then once you figure out the truth, then you have to go against the mob of ideas. Like Charles Darwin was terrified to release his theory on evolution because everyone at that time period thought that it all just was from the creation story. They didn't think that evolution could play a role in religion.
Yeah, you're right.
He was horrified to release like his findings. And we can't have people be horrified once they look the truth in the eye, and they can't be horrified to tell that story.
And certainly not panic.
No.
Yeah, we never want that.
No.
Ooh, that Darwin example is a great one.
Yeah.
Good work, Ella. That one's good.
I just pulled that out.
But no, I was looking for, I knew that I was alluding to something, but I figured it out. So basically what I was thinking is like with, say they require everyone to get the vaccine. Mm-hmm. And certain companies, if you want to rent a car, you have to prove that you've gotten this vaccine. So that interferes with your biology. This isn't just you paying a fee. Like this is like something that you're going to put in your body to affect your body. If it gets to the point where they market that you have to get this vaccine because it's the right thing to do, that's what I'm saying. Like there are so many debates right now, especially with health, where this is the right thing to do because you're protecting others. This is the right thing to do because you're protecting the world. This is the right thing to do because you're putting out the right message.
And that's the narrative shift that's happened, because before it's always been, this is the right, like I can determine what the right thing to do for myself as long as I'm abiding by the law, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the shift that's happening. That's what COVID has done. Because think about it with the flu. We've always had flu vaccines. Does everyone get the flu vaccine? No. Like it's up to people what they want to do, because it's not something that we're deeming as pandemic level. And COVID has allowed the opportunity for what you're talking about, which is that shift of mindset of now I have a social responsibility to everyone around me. And
social and biological.
Yeah.
That is an obligation. At what point do we not let certain policies like truly interfere with not only our day-to-day freedoms, but our biological freedom?
Well, and once you push that line, then like where does it end? Like for example, in the law, let's say what's the line between you and I being allowed to have a party in our home and us affecting our neighbor sleeping, right?
Yeah.
The whole point of law is to like figure out those boundaries on a case-by-case situation and to try to like avoid dealing with the law and to work it out with your neighbor. Like, okay, like you don't want me have people past 12 p.m. Like I got it. Like I won't do that, you know? And it's breaking that human connection to try to figure it out. And I actually learned about this this kind of theory of economics, which is called subsidiary. And it's really interesting because basically the definition of it is that a central authority should only have a subsidiary function, performing only the tasks which cannot be effectively done at a more local level.
Okay.
So it's like basically the government in economics and in politics, like the federal government should not be involved unless the local government doesn't have the efficiency to figure that out.
Oh, okay.
So I was like, okay, this is exactly what I subscribe to in terms of my political leanings. I'm not a full libertarian, but I'm also not a full authoritative federal government person. You know?
Yeah. Oh, I'm the same way.
Yeah.
I really like that. I resonate with that too. So yeah, these are like important debates to be had and concepts to circulate around our brains, because you're not going to get it from the media. The media isn't going to teach you this. Social media isn't going to teach you this stuff. No. They've already decided what their beliefs are, and they employ people that fall in line with those beliefs. Yeah. So it's really hard to get a mixture. I think a mixture is really good. Mm-hmm.
To wrap this up, like, what do you think? What do you think are kind of, there's like kind of a lot of negatives that we touched on and a lot of things that kind of put, especially me, in kind of a fear zone, which I don't like to be in that zone because I try to be very optimistic. But what do you think, like, if you're looking at the goals of the Great Reset, what are goals that you like, but you would implement it in a different way, per se?
Well, for one, I don't want to completely destroy capitalism. Yeah. I think that we can, I don't want to even use the word reimagine capitalism, because I think that kind of has the connotation leading to this. Yeah. I'm trying to think of another word that can revamp, enhance.
I think even just like fix the holes. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, if there's a loophole in the law that allows Jeff Bezos not to pay taxes, let's fix that law.
Yeah, let's fix that. Like, let's really aid these massive wealth giants to give back their share so that it doesn't affect the middle class.
Yeah, and it's weird that this system is all about controlling the middle class when it's like we're not the ones abusing the capitalist system. You know, we're the beneficiaries of it. So
no, we're the power. I mean, we have to have innovation. That's how we have all these amazing things in the society, with technology, with healthcare. Like you said, prolonging our lifespans. That has all come from capitalism and people having the freedom to do that and explore their desires and intellectual pursuits. I'm not saying that couldn't happen with the other side. I think that humans are very malleable and we are so flexible and we are so intelligent. We will figure it out. But I just want to emphasize that the people that are behind this right now might not have the greatest of motives that they're marketing. And so if you see words like stakeholder capitalism or
reimagining capitalism,
or we need to fix because of climate change and we need more sustainable global economic development.
Policies,
exactly. Those are all words.
Trigger words.
Those are all the trigger words. And I'm going to be a lot more open to seeing that now and just really take a second look, because I'm sure that I've come across this stuff before, but really only recently have I learned more about the Great Reset, and I think that we'll be seeing it a lot more, so keep your eyes peeled. And yeah, I think the goal for this episode wasn't to create fear or anything. I'm glad that we at least mentioned that it has been considered a conspiracy theory, although I personally do not believe that this is a theory at all. This is very real stuff. And a lot of the stuff that we just mentioned today is fact-based. We made sure that nothing that we were going to say here was subjective opinion or anything like that.
Yeah, we didn't get any of this from Alex Jones. Or
No, exactly. And he gets fact-checked crazily. But yeah, I mean, you can research this, and I'm going to read this book because I want to know
the enemy
in the mind of Klaus Schwab, really what he is wanting to do, because like they say, know your enemy.
Yeah,
to me, this is not a dude to mess with. So
yeah, for sure. And I think you have a great point. I think that we shouldn't be afraid to know that we can fix the problems that they're presenting, because they are presenting real problems and there's goals that we both align with, but who should be the one solving it, and what system should be the system we use to go about solving it. And I think that we can't be naive that humans need all those 4 pillars to be fulfilled in life.
Necessary.
And we don't need people who think that we just need our physical needs met, because
completely
those other parts are just as important. And if we just have our little plot of land and that's all we get, then we're going to be, it's going to feel like a feudalism or something.
And who knows? We might even lose that 4th physical pillar too. That's what happened in Venezuela.
Yeah,
The socialist government took over and they lost their ability to consume food.
You're right. So we might not even get one of the pillars. So it's just, nothing is guaranteed in life.
Yeah.
So you have to fight for what you believe in and what your priorities are. So
I just thought of something I'm not trying to add on, but because of technology and the access to spreading messaging, you don't really even need money to do that, to have a platform. We all have the ability to build a platform for ourselves and preach our ideals. If resistance to this spread like wildfire, we could put up a fight against these giants that, yes, they have financial means. Yes, they have connections all over the globe. However, they would not be able to outnumber a majority that is resistant to this.
It's a bug's life.
Exactly. Like,
ants.
Don't underestimate us. Yeah. And honestly, we could do another episode too, getting more into like legit predictions, or if this continues to develop, like I will probably follow it a lot more. So we could totally do that too.
Yeah. No, this is something that I want to stay updated with, and I think you guys should.
It's not doomsday, but it could be. It's in the works. So this isn't fully laid out yet.
Don't tread lightly.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for listening. Happy December.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Holiday season. So we're excited.
Hope you all had a great November, because we weren't present for that.
Sorry about that.
More episodes soon, and we will catch you next time.
Bye.
Bye.